Hello, my fellow chatterers and book lovers, and anyone else who's popped in because you're curious or you've got a bit lost. Welcome, everyone. I am Chatty, the Mad Chatter. This is my channel. Hello. Apologies for the voice, it's a bit croaky, but I want this video filmed, so we're just going with it. There's a random streamer here because it's from birthday decorations that have broken and haven't been taken down properly, and I can't be bothered to untie it, so that's the thing. I'm not sure of the lighting because there's a lamp here, but I want to sit here because it's cozy. So we're just going to go with it. This is, because I've already started rambling, this is the final part of my segmented study. So this is part, I want to say 8. We're going to go for 8 and we'll find out if I'm right. It could well have another number on the title and the thumbnail. We will see. But this is part 8 of my segmented study for Mogrog, who is following the path of a dreamwalker. She wants to be a dreamwalker. That is her chosen career in the Magical University of Orilium, which is part of the Magical Readathon that has been created by G from Book Roast. All of the links for G's announcement video about the Autumn Equinox is in the description box, so you can find out what the hell I'm talking about if you are completely baffled. There will also be the playlist to all of the other parts of the segmented study, which quite frankly will make it make a lot more sense. However, if you know what is going on, then you know what's going on, and we will just crack on. The last book I had to read was the Art of Illusion. And it was Minor Illusion, which was to read a book that is 300 pages or less. And for that, I had picked up a Rabble of Drabbles and Doodles, which is a self-published book by Wen Clark. And this is a collection of Drabbles, which could be poems, could be short stories, but they all are exactly 100 words. So what I really enjoy about this collection is that it's basically kind of like improvised writing. So it was put together by having various different words. I believe they were voted on. I believe it was kind of like a combined project that Wen Clark set in motion. The words were chosen and they collaborated with local artists. They were both given the same word, and Wen did a piece of writing that had to be 100 words, and the artist had to illustrate a picture which was, I think, 3 centimetres by 3 centimetres. I think they may both have had a time limit. I'm not entirely sure. But again, because it's self-published, it's only available in certain places. So I will link the website and the Facebook page about this, so you can find out some more information. And because it was written to raise funds for a chair to support this family and kind of improve their way of life. So it was really interesting. I had kind of dipped in and out, but it was really interesting to read cover to cover and see the whole range that is in here. I mean, it literally is like, you know, a sort of a lucky dip, like box of chocolates, all of those metaphors where you can find yourself like being really moved by one piece of writing, and then the next you've got a really kind of surreal fantasy piece of writing, and then the next you've kind of got more of a horror piece of writing. So it's really kind of like bits and pieces. You didn't know what you were going to get, which I found a lot of fun. And one of the things I started doing was, I'm just going to demonstrate with this page here because I'm going to come back to this one in a moment. So here we have the word. So the word is fantasy. And then this was the drawing from the artist. So we do 3 centimetres by 3. No, I think it must be inches because that is not centimetres. Ignore me. Inches. 3 inches? I think it's 3 inches. Do you know what? It's smallish. It's this size. this size. There we go. That's the size. So what I would do is I would see the word, I'd look at the picture, and then I'd ignore this bit. I'd ignore the title, and then I'd just read and see where the story took me, and then go back and read the title. So that doing it that way, I kind of enjoyed not knowing where the piece of writing was going to take me. So that was a lot of fun. And there are quite a few bits of writing where you think it's going in one direction and then actually goes in a completely different one. And it caught me by surprise on a couple of times. Like suddenly there's a joke or there's a reason for what's happening, or the tone of the writing suddenly shifts by one comment. And I really enjoyed that. Like, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. So that was a lot of fun. And I think within this, everyone's going to have their own favourites. Everyone reads differently. And so this is definitely, there's something for everyone. So you're going to find bits in here that you enjoy more than others. And I really enjoyed sort of going through and trying to work out, well, which ones are my favourites? Which ones are the ones that really speak to me? And one of the things I love reading about social issues. And one thing I don't read enough of is disability representation. So I'm going to read a piece of writing, and that was very much the theme of this. And the author, as well as being in the work, it's trans own voices, and it is also disability own voices as well. So I'm going to read you the piece that was inspired by the word fantasy. Taking a deep breath, I describe intentions for my day, or rising early from bed, ready to carry them out. I'd make breakfast without pause, casually savouring the pleasure of food. Washed and dressed in clothes which suited my mood, reflected my personality. I'd decide whether I would add accessories or express love of self in another way today. I'd travel routinely to the job which allowed me to interact with people, helped me finance hobbies, small pleasures. Later with friends, family, we'd chat about our world, how we could make a difference. I'd sleep deeply, knowing tomorrow wouldn't hurt. And the title of this piece is called In a Magical World Where Everything is Okay. So you can read that in two ways. So you can read that in a way of being content with your life, and in a way where people wouldn't be hurt emotionally as well. And you can also read it physically, knowing that all those simple things that as able-bodied people we really take for granted. Someone with disabilities, they sometimes just can't put any old clothes on. They have to put on clothes that allows them maybe sort of like better access to be able to move things. It might be that there's certain fabrics that they need. It might be that there's like a certain heaviness to things that they need to kind of take account of. So maybe like jewelry can aggravate them. So it's like all those little things that able-bodied people will just do without a second thought is something that someone with disabilities would be their fantasy to just be able to do that without having to think round a whole load of other things to be able to do their day-to-day life. So I thought it was really interesting having the two different aspects of that, and just the appreciation of just living pain-free, both emotionally and physically. So that one I really appreciated, with the message and the way it kind of conveyed that picture and that emotion. So another one that I also enjoyed as well was this one because I like the word and the other just because I just thought it was amazing that within 100 words they managed to tell this story. So the word is serendipity, which is a wonderful word. How fabulous. I think you should say it because it will make you feel happy when you say it. Serendipity. And like you have to make lots of funny sounds with your mouth and it feels really funny. And so this one, it tells the story, again, that 100 words. And we've got two different points of view in this story. So it starts off with humans in a couple of sentences explaining how they first saw each other to then becoming friends. And then you get the point of view, they're both dog walkers. Then you get the point of view of their dogs, of how the dogs have been aware that their humans were feeling sad and they kind of met up to try and give them companionship. And so they kind of pushed their owners together in a sort of cute 101 Dalmatians-y type of way. But the focus being on friendship, not on romantic love. And I just really enjoyed it. And I just loved the feel that it gave. It was just a really nice, happy, sweet story. Another story I really enjoyed was Clavicle, because I enjoyed the kind of the poetic language that was in it, how it was described, and then how it took me in a different direction at the end. And I had a strong emotional reaction to that one, which I'm not going to say because you may want to pick up a Rabble of Drabbles and Doodles and find all of this out for yourself. So there was so much kind of in here that you could enjoy, and it is kind of like poetry where you can dip in and out and kind of read things over again and kind of get deeper meaning from it. Or there are also ones in here that confuse me, and I'm like, what? Let me just read that again. And there's I had to look up words because I'm like, actually, what is that? So one of the words, I wrote one of them down that I had to look up. Arable. I was like, what is an arable? What is an arable? So an arable is land used for and suitable for growing crops. So there we go. I did a lot of learning in this, having to find things. I very much enjoyed, there was some sort of beautiful imagery in here that I thought was really lovely. Just kind of exploring something very simple and just painting it in a different way to kind of see the beauty in it. There was kind of connections between different humans and kind of the importance of cherishing each other and being kind to each other and appreciating that. So there were some nice kind of emotional moments in that sense as well. So yes, it was a mixture of everything that you can kind of just dip in and find. But like I said, I enjoyed the experience of reading it from cover to cover and kind of having this roller coaster of where are we going. It's kind of like it was like a fun game of exploring. You've no idea what was going to come next, and it was quite entertaining. And yet I like to not know where the story was heading until the end, and I would then read that. So I recommend trying that if you want to, and you can just put a bookmark. So you just kind of like put a bookmark over the top, and then you read it, and then you go, and this has got this. So that was fun. So yeah, it's really, really different. So if you're looking for something very different to read, if you're wanting some like short stories, if you're someone that enjoys poetry, if you're someone that enjoys a book doing something in a different way, like I just really enjoy how this was created. I enjoy the creative process between this. And if you're someone that really wants to support self-published work, then I highly recommend going and checking this out. Like I've said, I will leave all the information in the description box so you can do that. So we have the final class now. So Mogrog has one last exam that she needs to pass. So let's go and see what that is. The final class that must be studied is an O in alchemy. So for level O, we have to read poison. It is a poison study. I thought this was such a fun prompt. So for this one, what you had to do is you had to look through booktubers' worst of lists. Or, you know, if you had a friend who you knew really didn't like a book, and read one of the books they didn't like that you think you may actually enjoy. So I really enjoyed that. I had quite a few options for this one, and it changed a couple of times, but I ended up going for The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which was on Sophia from Sophia's Thoughts, most disappointing of 2020 books. So I remember watching her video and going, I want to read that book. I'm just going to pause it there, and I'm just going to skip over and not hear what she has to say about it. So then, having read it, I then went back and listened to what Sophia had to say about it to find out why she found it disappointing. And actually what she says makes a lot of sense for her, and why, as a different person, I actually did enjoy this. Yay! So The Vanishing Half is a historical fiction. It's also a literary fiction, which I was not aware of. I'm not someone who reads literary fiction. I think I'm someone that is intimidated by the word literary fiction, because quite a lot of it doesn't work for me, and I have to try too hard to understand what's going on. If you enjoy literary fiction, that's absolutely fine. I'm glad that you are having a wonderful time with it, but I'm much more of a genre story-based rather than artsy-based person. But I did really enjoy this. There is definitely a mix of people who enjoyed this, who didn't enjoy it, and I think that is depending on what you want from this book. So this book has got a lot of really interesting themes and a really interesting premise. It is inspired by Nella Larson's passing, and Britt Bennett does say that. Like, I have then also gone on and listened to interviews, because I heard that she had been inspired, and then she also says in an interview that she was inspired by Passing from Nella Larsen. And it is often compared to Passing. It's like, it's intentional. So in the classic Passing, there is a light-coloured woman who is actually black, but she is so light that she passes for white, and her husband thinks she is white, and she moves amongst white society, but meets some old school friends and kind of secretly comes to come and socialise with them again and mourns what she left behind. So in this one, we have that concept, but done with twins. So in this one, there is a fictional town called Mallard, which kind of has grown from black people that are very, very light-skinned, who enjoy the lightness of their skin and take pride in the lightness of their skin and want to preserve that and create a space for them to be a community of light-skinned black people. So massive colorism going on right there at the start. So that feels uncomfortable. And what's really interesting is that we have these two twins who are very, very light-skinned that could pass, which one of them ends up doing, and one of them kind of rebels against the concept. So they go in completely different directions. And you might be able to tell from here the issues of their certain directions. And we also then have what one twin just disappears and doesn't tell the other twin. So we pick the story up where the town is talking about the scandal of the twins disappearing and never knowing what happened, and then one twin has reappeared. So one twin married a dark-skinned man and has a very black-coloured child, and has come back to her light-skinned community with her child. So they're loving gossip in this small town. They're having a wonderful time chatting about this. And this is where we start the story. We are introduced to this twin, which is Desiree. We are introduced to her daughter, Jude, and what kind of brought them to their lives so far. So there's a lot of going back and forth in this in terms of time jumps. So we get Desiree and her twin, Estelle, who's known as Stella, as children. And Desiree being the confident one, and Stella being the more kind of studious one, who's more withdrawn and really wishes she could, go to college and all these dreams. But they are financially poor. I mean, it's a great way of explaining that, Shah. They are poor, and they need to give up their education and go and work to kind of add to the family funds. But eventually they decide that they sort of just want to get out. Desiree just really wants to go just because she's just annoyed by the town. She just wants to go and explore somewhere else. She's feeling adventurous. And we don't know what Stella's reasons are until later on in the book. But she goes with her, and they leave. And they go to New Orleans. And then at some point, and for some reason, one day Stella's not there. She's gone. She's taken her stuff and she's gone. It's not like she's just suddenly been knocked down by a car and we don't know what happened to her. Like, she has gone. And Desiree has no idea. And hasn't heard from her, has no idea what happened to her, but her sister just left. So that's where we start the story. And then as the story progresses, we see the lives of these two twins. And all throughout it, you're going, where do we meet Stella again? Where do we find out what happened with Stella? So there's this intrigue that's been built up. And I feel you get the payoff when suddenly she appears. And then there is coincidences that link kind of the different families together, but it's very much kind of exploring different choices. So this isn't so much a story of, this is what happens, this is the plot, this is where it goes, this is how we tie it all up and together. It's much more kind of like a psychological examination and an exploring different choices and kind of where that's taken you, and kind of comparing slightly different life choices and are you happy with them? Why did you make them? What did they mean to you because of that choice? How do you then react to the world? It explores a lot of that. So you do explore everything kind of from Desiree's point of view, and then Jude will kind of pick up the story at different points, but also we'll look back into the past at kind of different time moments. We will then also explore Stella's point of view. So we do get to go and see what's happened to Stella, where she ended up, what caused her to leave, all of those things. And she has got a child as well. and her child is completely white and has no idea that she has got any black heritage whatsoever. And then we start to get a bit of her life as well. So the children do have a bit of the narrative kind of with their lives and exploring them, but it is mainly kind of Desiree and Stella that kind of are our protagonists of the story. But with Desiree, I think it's safe to say most people like her, and Jude. Most people like Jude. So if you're reading this and you're enjoying it, you relate to Jude and you relate to Desiree. They are the characters that you can find very relatable. You root for them. You're interested. You have empathy for them, and you want good things to happen to them. Estella, I would say, is intriguing, but we don't agree with her choices. I mean, you could be someone that reads this and goes, yes, sound, Stella, well done you. I have yet to hear that viewpoint. I have yet to hear the viewpoint of anyone applauding Stella and saying, we stand with you. I think most people go, she's a very interesting character. I'm intrigued to see how she thinks and how she acts and how she got to where she wanted to go. But I don't think anyone finds her particularly likable because of the choices she's made. And you do have kind of a bit of a comparison. So Stella is in a very white neighbourhood and passing as white, and a black family move into that neighbourhood, and this makes her uncomfortable. And so you're then watching this kind of dynamic as well to things about how that's going, and that's really interesting, and I think that reveals a lot about Stella and her inner turmoil with that. My favourite characters in here were Jude, and I love the relationship between Jude and Reese. I absolutely was rooting for them. There was this one whole chapter where it basically went from them meeting, you being interested in them, you wanting them to get together, being difficulties in that road, and them getting together. And the whole thing just felt perfectly placed. Like, you didn't feel it was rushed. You were gripped by their story. Well, I was. This is my opinion, and I was gripped. You may have a completely different opinion to me. I was very gripped by it. I was enthralled and pulled in, and I felt the payoff at the end, and I was like, yes! Oh, amazing. And I was like, that was one chapter. That was impressive. That I found that very impressive, that I was made to feel all those things in one chapter. So as well as exploring the theme of colorism in here, we also look at, there is some trans representation in here as well. And I thought that that was done really well. So it being a historical fiction, we are going from the late 60s to the late 80s in here. So there are certain character choices and I think decisions they make that feel very reflective of the time, and I thought that was all done really well, and I thought it was very it felt like a very truthful portrayal of what it could have been like for one person's journey at that time who was trans. Now, listening to a few other people talking about this, so firstly, the reason Sophia didn't like it is because, one, the historical fiction was kind of too modern for her tastes, and also it was literary fiction, and she found she wasn't gripped or enthralled by the story because the writing was very was kind of more literary and kind of beautiful and flowy rather than what she needed to pull her into the story. Whereas I didn't find that for myself, but I don't clout myself as someone who just appreciates all of the beauty in the words. But clearly this worked for me. So whatever was happening in here, it ticked my boxes. I think because of, I actually felt disappointed with passing because I wanted it really to kind of lean into more of the race theme and have this kind of bond of sisterhood. And it kind of went more off into a direction of exploring like a marital thing and your kind of inner turmoil and kind of two different things conflicting with each other. So it went off in a different direction. But because that's not the direction that I wanted the story to go into, I just felt disappointed by it. So I think having read that, I think I really lowered any expectation I had going into this about what I wanted the story to do. So I kind of went into this a lot more fluid, going, I am interested to see where you take me. I'm happy for your theme, and I want you to decide where we're going with this. And so it kept it very kind of close to these characters. It wasn't like, let's really open up colorism, let's really kind of make this clear, break it down, make a decision on what is correct and what isn't. It was, this is how these people think. This is these people's life decisions. This is what happened to these characters. And you can think what you like, was kind of what we got from this. I have heard people say they didn't understand Stella's motivation. And I did not talk about this when I spoke about this in my January wrap-up, which I will link, because I felt this was really clear. So I felt I very much read this book, and I felt the author really kind of was exploring a theme of freedom in here. And then listening to her talking about it, and actually that she was kind of exploring a theme of performing. And I was like, I didn't get that. I got freedom. Which I'll go on to in a moment, and why I thought the inclusion of certain characters kind of helped with that theme. What was my original point? Where did we go? It'll come to me in a minute. Yeah, Stella's motivation. So I'm going to go into spoilers now to explain this properly, because I can't do it any other way. So if you haven't read it, want to read it, don't want to be spoiled, skip to the end if you want to hear me say goodbye, or I'll see you in another video. Bye, bye, bye. Thank you so much for watching. Okay, so there is an incident early on in the book where both the twins witness their father being lynched in their house and left for dead. But he doesn't die. He is taken to hospital, and then in hospital, they come back and they kill him. So that is highly, highly traumatic and something no child should ever see. But for both girls, it made this kind of concept of the appreciation of a lightness of skin an absolute farce. So to Desiree, she saw it as, this is ridiculous. It doesn't matter what skin you are. We are seen as black and we are treated like scum. And Stella saw it as, my father can never keep me safe. Being this light of skin cannot keep me safe. The only way I would ever be safe is if I'm thought of as white. So for me, the decision she made was to be safe. She had a chance to pretend to be white and feel safe. And that's what she went with. So it wasn't so much of her finding her freedom and being able to have the privilege of being white. It was, this way I might not die before I'm old. So it made sense to me. I could see her logic behind it. And I think we got enough of her. She also experiences abuse at the hand of a white employer. So someone who's white in a position of power over her sexually abuses her and has taken away her agency. And so she's also got all of that trauma, which she never shared with anyone. Like, her sister never knew about that. So that was only her. So as much as we never warmed to Stella, you can see where she comes from in terms of making these choices. Like, she has been made, she's seen something traumatic as a child. She has suffered abuse herself, both by white people, and she is terrified. And she does talk about this to a certain extent about her fear. But she hopes that by holding on to, like, pretending to be white and maintaining this facade, masquerade, that will keep her safe, and then that will keep her daughter safe as well. And she doesn't, regardless of any kind of callings or feelings she has towards her heritage and the black community and her family, her needing to be safe seems to override all of that. So it doesn't necessarily amount to happiness, but those are the choices she's made. So to me, it made sense. It was logical. The thing that gave me the freedom is we have the inclusion of different characters within the LGBT community. So we see a drag performer, we see a drag artist in the shape of Brian, who is wonderful. I think everyone needs a wonderful friend like Brian. He was absolutely marvellous. And I loved his relationship with Jude and Rhys, kind of just being that wonderful kind of like slightly older mentor figure to them both. But what we see from Brian is how his art, his drag, his character of, I can't remember her name. I want to say Bianca, but I don't know if that's true. But I'm going to call her Bianca for now. So apologies to what his drag character is in this book. But being able to be Bianca gave him his freedom. Like, he felt so free on the stage from being able to live his best life, just be able to just slip into someone else's shoes and be them, and then go back to being him as well. It just gave him this just drive for life and just absolute sense of being free to be whoever he wanted and whatever he wanted to be. And we see that from him, you know, having various different jobs, and the fact that this that his drag performance doesn't really get him a lot of money, but he's compelled to keep doing it because the thought of not doing it makes him feel trapped. So that was fascinating. And we also see from Rhys, who is a trans man, that being able to be Rhys and live as Rhys is his true self. You know, that is his freedom to be himself. Unfortunately, within this day and age, he has to act as a cis man and not as trans, because that would be, well, even now I think it's still very clear in this day and age that there is a lot of hatred and animosity towards trans people, and that hate crimes and death happens. And that was worse in the past. It's still terrible now. We have a lot of work to do, but in the past it was a lot worse. So you understand why Rhys is passing. And I love the kind of the support between him and Jude of like working through their different boundaries, working through what makes them feel okay and not okay, and just trying to communicate. And it's such a healthy relationship because they really do try hard to try and explain how they're feeling to each other. They make mistakes. They don't always explain it too well. And, you know, there's a lot going on. They have a lot of emotions. But I did feel it was very truthful, the way their relationship was portrayed. It's not going to be everyone's journey, but this was this one character's journey and the way they did things. But what is very different, which I also felt was freeing, was that the difference between Stella's relationship with her husband and Jude's relationship with Rhys, in that Jude and Rhys were open with each other and knew each other's secrets, whereas Stella and her husband did not. So there we go. So, change in location due to my children being home. So I think that the other characters kind of found freedom in different ways as well, but kind of a bit more simplistically. So I feel that Jude definitely found freedom by leaving Mallet. It was not good for her. She was bullied very harshly. And I believe that Desiree found a certain sense of freedom. You know, she was physically freed from an abusive relationship, but she also, I think, did feel guilty about leaving her mum. So I think there was a sense of freedom in going back and taking care of her mum, and then she could leave Mallet again. So I thought that felt freeing. And I suppose the only other character we have left to talk about is Kennedy, the daughter of Stella. And I think her freedom came to her in terms of how she was finally able to have her mother tell her the truth about her life and her past and where she came from. So that probably felt freeing, that her mum wasn't lying to her anymore. So yeah, I did really enjoy this book and kind of where it took us. I think it's not for everyone in that it doesn't have that linear story. It doesn't kind of wrap everything up and kind of complete it and dot all the I's and cross all the T's. It kind of leaves you, it's like, here's a story, here's different parts where our characters finished, we're done. And that's kind of the feeling that the book had. But yeah, so this was my poison, and it wasn't poisonous for me, so yay, that was good. So now that was the last one that Mogrog had to study. So she has now passed. Hooray! Clap, 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 clap. Mogrog Ishaya has graduated from Orilium and is now a certified dream walker and can go off and pursue her dream and go and be an eco warrior and whatever else the earthling wants to go and do. Which means I don't feel that she'd study any further. I really enjoyed playing with her character and kind of getting to enjoy the idea of the portal and the elements. But I'm going to make a different character for this year because it's fun. But this time I'm not going to choose it on the bits that I enjoy the most. I'm going to choose it via books. So I have written prompts for character creation and then forgotten what they mean. So I just have little bits of paper. And then I'm going to choose books and then we're going to work out what that means for creating a character. So that's going to be my next video. And everything else Orilium related for this year. So for 2023, I'm going to have a new character. So we're going to have a new segmented study for Orilium. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Please feel free to like and give me a little chat down below. And if you haven't already subscribed and you enjoy the vibe, then please click that button. Happy reading, everyone.